Additions, deletions, corrections? If not, all in favor? All opposed? The ayes have it. Next on our agenda is a public hearing. It's on Senate Street, changing the street from two ways to one way. This is a public hearing on Senate Street and Senate Street only, so I'm going to call the public hearing to order. The committee will now hear any comment from the public about turning Senate Street, which is in downtown Charleston, from two ways to one way. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to be heard on the two-way, one-way conversion of Senate Street? Hearing none, is there any comment from any member of the committee? All right, I'm going to call the public hearing to a close. Madam Clerk, do we get any written comments on this? Okay, fair enough. I'm going to call the public hearing closed and ask for a motion on the turning of.
So moved. Second.
In a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is a update on the Assay River crossing. Mayor Cogswell and staff. I'll hand it to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This will be pretty brief. We'll start with per the agenda, with the update on the Arc Bridge. The city is still evaluating cost estimates for the East Landing revision, which is, you all will recall, the platform roundabout tying into the Riverwalk permit. And we are looking to have some estimates on that cost back in the next few days, and we'll bring those to this committee to review and decide how we would want to move forward. But as for the bridge itself, currently there is no change order, and Mastech is the contractor is walking down the crane over the West Marsh. They're starting from the west side of the river and coming over. The Dakota MAT system is following that. The Permatrack system sections for the West Marsh are being delivered to the site. That'll be the actual platform for the bridge itself. And then you may have noticed the drill shaft barge is mobilized and in the river. Test shaft work is to begin next week. So a lot of progress on the Arc Bridge, exciting stuff. It is still anticipated to be on budget and on schedule for completion in the summer of 2027. I'm happy to answer any other questions about the Arc Bridge, or we can move on to the low line update.
Any questions about the bridge from any committee member? All right, next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Low line Phase 1 RFQ, and Phase 1, you will recall, is Line Street to Mount Pleasant Street, was issued out on February the 16th. Responses for the RFQ are due on March 7th. We will bring a proposed contract to City Council on April the 8th to award the project, hopefully. Our goal, assuming this schedule, will be to break ground in December. So this is moving along pretty quickly. We are also collaborating with Friends of the Low Line to help develop future fundraising opportunities for the project. Again, what we are funding is the path itself, park space and amenities on the side of it, and then will be to be determined, but I think we're going to get some real luck with private sector and nonprofit funding. So that's the general update there. Optimistic that that will continue on schedule and excited to get this thing kicked off.
All right, questions on the low line? Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory.
Mr. Mayor, are we still pursuing federal funding, or is that out?
No, we are definitely pursuing federal funding. And I'm looking at trying to read lips with some of this. We're still absolutely pursuing it, yes.
Okay, any other questions for the mayor? Anybody on staff on the low line? Sounds like.
Follow-up question.
Yeah, sure.
What executive order? Which executive order?
Presidents.
I know, but which one? There's so many. I mean, which one applies to this project? And executive orders they're not law.
Right. So what the federal grant systems are right now, if you don't have a written agreement, they're frozen for the time being. And so if they haven't been, so with the Arc Bridge, we're safe there because we have actually a signed agreement that's moving forward. But with any grant application that we haven't entered into an agreement with, it's on hold for now.
Thank you.
I don't know the name of which executive
Don't worry
order.
about it, don't worry.
Well, and again, Josh, if I may, it's not only if an agreement has not been entered into, but also if there has not been an appropriation for it.
That's correct.
Right.
And there's actually a judicial order on that appropriations portion of it, so there's all sorts of stuff going on, both in executive orders and in the court system, and they'll get it all unraveled eventually, but not anytime in the near future. All right, any other questions on the low line? That grant notwithstanding, we are on schedule and it sounds like fairly aggressive schedule for getting this project going. All right, any other questions? If not, next, River Road improvements, Johns Island Elementary School update. I have this on my agenda as the CCSD and city staff. Who's going to take the lead on this?
I'll make an initial comment, then hand it over to Robbie, in that we have been in close contact with CCSD on this. They are committed to coming to our next meeting. They were unable to make it at this meeting. So they want to engage in public dialogue and let everybody know what's going on. They just were unable to come to this meeting because of the short notice. But turn it over to you, Robbie, with any other details.
That's correct. The city actually met with CCSD, I believe it was last week, and just had a conversation about it. And I will say that they are committed to making all the adjustments or requirements per the right-of-way contracts through DOT, the roundabout, turn lanes, everything that's required prior to allowing the students to enter that school. So that's one thing that they expressed to us, was that they wanted to make sure everything was in place when the school is to be open. And if it's not, then they would leave the students at the schools where they're currently at.
And that depends on the occupancy permit, right? I'm sorry, I didn't wasn't recognized.
Well, it's okay. No, I get it. It's a CO is what
Right.
they're going to do.
Actually, they do not need a CO from the city of Charleston. We dug into that. I guess they get their permit from the state.
Yes.
So we do not have control over the CO process.
Interesting. Do we do building inspections or does the state do that too? Fire, all that stuff? Who does all those inspections?
I would assume that would be coming from our inspectors and or the county's inspectors, but we can get a definitive answer on that. But we have had, did dig into the legal aspect of the certificate of occupancy, and it's not within our purview based on state law. Again, the school district has conveyed to us, as Robbie pointed out, that they do not plan on opening the school to kids until they have the road improvements completed.
Okay, so we'll hear from CCSD at the next TNT meeting. Is that the plan? Which is second meeting of next month? Okay. Councilmember McBride.
Yeah, if, got a lot of public interest in this, obviously,
Sure.
especially the neighborhoods around there. A lot of them thought would be getting into the weeds a little bit today, so we're delayed a month. I could just ask if we could give concerted effort, next month to dig into this and peel the layers back so everyone understands. I took a ride yesterday really quick with SCDOT, Josh and Tim Anderson, and went down River Road to kind of point out the concerns. And there's going to be more improvements than I was aware of from the Brownswood River intersection, as far as improving the shoulders and adding some piping up to almost 1,000 feet, 800 feet in one direction, 300 feet in another direction, which would address a lot of my concerns as far as the immediate safety of River Road. So anyway, again, hopefully next month we can get peel the layers back on this, and
We'll
public
make
can
sure of that. And I think one of the things we heard today is And the concern that was expressed the last time we were here was whether or not the school would open before those improvements were completed. And it sounds to me like that is not an option.
Exactly.
So I think that's very important for people to know, and we'll sort of see where that goes from there. All right.
Thank you. Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns I'll take back the concerns part. I know we got plenty of those. Questions or comments for today on, the River Road? All right, thanks. All right, next, Mr. Somerville, I guess I'm going to hand this over to you. We got a presentation from Charleston Spokes Line Bike Share. You see there's one in front of us here, so, I'm going to turn over the floor to you, Mr. Somerville, and see where we go from there.
Yes, thank you, sir. We have representatives from Lime here today to present their, give an update on the bike share program. This program started in May of 22. So we have Ms. Carol and Antonez and John Phillips here with Lime that I'll let them take it over.
Good afternoon, welcome.
So much for being here. Thank you for the time. I will briefly introduce myself.
Please speak into the microphone.
Yes,
Thank
my
you.
name is Carol Antunes. I'm a Senior Manager of Government Relations with Lime, and I'm joined by my colleague, John Phillips, Operations Coordinator. Together, we help oversee the Charleston e-bike program. I'll just start with a very brief background on Lime. We are the world's largest shared electric vehicle company. Our mission is pretty straightforward: to build a future where transportation is shared, affordable, and carbon-free. We operate in almost 300 cities across the globe and 5 continents. We have a fleet of about 200,000 globally and have provided close to 800 million micromobility trips. I'm going to get into our program here in Charleston specifically. We launched in May of 2022. So just a little bit about the rules of the road for our program. We're sponsored by MUSC. It's strictly an e-bike program, station-based. We have stations throughout all of downtown. Riders must start and end their trip at a station, so that is part of the rules. They're not allowed to do so otherwise. There are a couple of standard sort of rider rules that we like to constantly remind our riders of. Must be 18 plus to ride. There's no tandem riding, no impaired riding. We use a suite of technology and features to implement no ride zones, slow zones, special geofencing, like the parking corrals, for example. And as you see here, these are just a couple of examples of the current stations that we have deployed throughout Charleston. I wanted to spend some time talking about our flexible pricing option. So there's a pay-as-you-go rate when you first approach the vehicle. That's $1 to unlock and then 43 cents per minute. This is not the rate that most people pay. We have pass options ranging from a day pass to a 30-day pass, all with the intention of making micromobility truly a commuter option so that folks can choose to leave behind their cars and hop on a bicycle instead. We also have a Lime Access program, which provides a 70% discount, which ends up being the 30 cents to unlock and 12 cents per minute. And that's for low-income folks. So anybody on any local, state, federal assistance program is eligible for this program. It takes about 2 minutes to sign up on our website, and you get an approval within 2 to 5 minutes. I'm going to get into some ridership stats for our program here, specifically 255,000 lifetime trips since inception in May 2022, almost 500,000 miles traveled on micromobility, and close to 100,000 unique riders. Year-over-year program performance. So we launched in about halfway in 2022. 2023 was the first year for which we had full data. And so as you can see, we had about a 50% jump in ridership, which is attributed to the fact that we had a full 12 months. Pretty solid year, about 100,000 trips, almost 40,000 riders. The average trip distance and trip duration remained pretty consistent. In terms of how Charleston performs in comparison to other programs with trip distance and duration, we actually see longer trips here. And we attribute that to the fact that it's an e-bike only program, and usually our bikes will see longer trips, whether they're 2-3 miles, because they're just more comfortable versus a stand-up scooter. And then we get into 2024. So as you can see here, there was a decrease of almost 15% in total trips. And and that is kind of holds true for total miles traveled and the number of riders. So we have a couple of theories as to why that's the case, and I'll get into that throughout my presentation. Great. Um, I know we're limited on time, so I'll move through this quickly, but this is just a heat map representation of where we see the bulk of our activity. So the redder the lines on the map, the more activity we see. The numbers there are very small, but I'm happy to follow up afterwards. They just have the total number of trip starts for 2024 in each of the hub locations. And then we pulled out the top 8 hubs in terms of popularity where we see the most trip starts. Lime Bluffs, Charleston, a big part of just our overall ethos as a company is to really like be in service to the communities where we operate. And so we regularly participate in events and we partner to distribute free helmets. We do hands-on riding instructions through our Lime academies. We also in-kind the use of our e-bikes for events throughout the year. And we try and promote alternative transportation anytime that we get the opportunity to do so. We have a Lime Hero partner here in Charleston, Charleston Moves. The way that this works is riders have the ability to go into the app and then round up the cost of their trip. And so we will basically pull that money together and make a contribution to the organization of our choice here at Charleston Moves every quarter. And just some information on how riders can opt in. We have also rolled out some exclusive discounts in the city of Charleston. The most recent one that we're proud to offer was in December 2024. We provide 50% off all trips for city employees. And we also have a special discount for MUSC staff on the campus. And for the city employee discount, all that is necessary is a city issued email address. So with that address, once you enroll with the Lime app, you will have access to that discount. It's automatically applied. I'm going to get into some safety and compliance. So we do a ton around rider education. So that's not only in person, but through the app at all points. So it's information on local regulations, how to actually engage with the vehicle. We do require an end of ride photo for every single trip. And so we actually have AI that goes through and verifies that folks are appropriately parking. If they're not, then we can put them through a violation policy and issue warnings, violations. And we do have a 24/7, 365 customer support team available in multiple languages. I believe it's up to 16 languages currently, and they're available at all times of the day. We want people to contact us. So if you see a vehicle where it's not meant to be, anything's wrong, somebody's riding recklessly, we want to know, and we can pretty quickly act on it. So we have multiple ways to do this. We have a 888 phone number, email, the QR code on the actual vehicles, and the phone number is also physically on the vehicles. And then we have an online safety portal or any social media channel of Lime where we're constantly monitoring those. So I'm going to get into why we think there's been a slight decrease in our ridership. So this is the current vehicle that we have deployed. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It's our Gen 4 e-bike. With our Gen 4 e-bike, it's a pedal assist only vehicle, so one must engage the pedals in order to propel forward. We have introduced, not yet here in Charleston, but what we would like to introduce is a throttled version of the vehicle. What it does is it gives people choice. So it gives them the choice to pedal or to engage the throttle, just giving them additional choices and really expanding the use cases for the trips that they're doing. So maybe it's getting from work, getting to work or from work after a long day and it's a hot summer day. It really gives folks the ability to choose e-bikes without the requirement of pedaling at all times. So we've done some testing on the performance of throttled versus pedal assist. And so we know that on average, we see 33% more rides on our throttled e-bikes. And then we know that 93% of riders actually engage the throttle when given the opportunity. And what you have here today is our Lime Bike, which is our most inclusive ride yet. So we took the feedback of our riders, women, folks with mobility limitations, older communities, and really put all of that feedback into the design of this vehicle. So it has a lower center of gravity, it's much easier to engage with, it's less intimidating. It also has a longer range, 60 plus miles, making it really a true commuter vehicle. Larger cargo bike, continues to have large wheels really so you can tackle on more difficult terrain. And so our theory is that we have an aging fleet here in Charleston. So what we have known, and this is a global trend and also in the US, is e-bike ridership when it comes to class 1 is not booming as it is when it comes to class 2. So class 2 e-bike ridership is through the roof, and we know people are engaging with throttled bikes. It's not the same for pedal assist. And so that trend has remained pretty consistent nationwide, but also globally as we have tested out the vehicles. So the Lime Bike not only performs better than a throttled e-bike, what we have out on the road, but it really competes with scooter ridership, which is what we want to mimic. We want to have that same level of utility that the scooters have. So our recommendation is really to modernize the Charleston fleet. We can do this rather quickly. Two ways. One, adding throttles to our existing fleet of e-bikes, which we could retrofit within a month. And the second would be to introduce Lime Bike and have a mixed sort of fleet with with our Gen 4 and our Lime Bike vehicles. In terms of what would be required as the next step to do this would be to amend our current agreement with the city, just so that we have the flexibility of infleeting not only class 1 e-bikes, but class 2. And I will open it for questions.
All right, any questions for? All right, Councilmember Gregory.
If there's an accident, who's liable? Are they insured when they put the card in? How does that work?
I can't speak on hypotheticals, but we are insured with to all state sort of code and regulations. And so every time there's an incident, we have our team, our claims team get involved and they help the rider out through that process. And so it really, it depends on the nature of the incident. But yeah, we are insured, we have a policy, we provide the city with a COI every time there's a renewal of the agreement.
Okay, so let's not talk about hypotheticals. How many accidents have we had?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we do know that 99.99% of trips end incident-free.
Okay, the other question is, you talked about when there's a violation, there's enforcement, some type of picture or something you said taken with AI. How does that work?
Yes. So every single time you end your ride, you take a photograph. We have an AI that actually looks at that photo and will determine good parking, bad parking. Anything that's flagged as bad parking, our team can actually go in and review those photographs, and then we actually will put folks through our violation policy. So the very first infraction will be a warning. So we've done a couple of years of research on this, and we know like one warning will usually go a long way, and you see a drop of like 90+% in any bad actions with that specific rider moving forward. And then if it continues to be a pattern, then they go through the violation policy until they're ejected from the platform.
Okay, you talked also about discounts. You talked about city staff discounts and some others, but you also talked about discounts for lower income persons. And they have to be enrolled in a program, a lower income program, I think is what you said. And where I'm headed is all low income people are not enrolled in programs. So when you have a situation like that, how do you handle it?
No, that's great feedback. We have a third-party platform that takes a slew of different like income verification. And so I don't have that exhaustive list off the top of my head, but I'm happy to follow up and kind of provide what that extensive list is for what would qualify someone.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I've got a few, if you don't mind. So how many stations do y'all have on the peninsula? How many? How about how many bikes? 100 bikes? All right. One of the things, and Councilmember Gregory asked about this, he said if you see violations, you have a method which enforce violations. How many violations were there in 2025 of your policies on your bikes?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can certainly follow up with the 2025 and 2024 numbers.
Okay, and then you don't have any information on how many incidents involving line bikes?
I know the percentage. I don't have the total number.
Well, how many, I think you put up there how many rides you had, how many distinct rides you had in 2023 and 2024, right? Somewhere around 100,000?
It's 0.01%.
So 100,000 trips and you've got a 0.01% accident rate? That's right. So it would not be an uncountable number, it'd be a countable number of incidents.
It would be it's a low number. It's I don't want to misspeak, but I'm confident that we're in the single digits.
Hey, Ms. Copeland, have we had any claims on line bike incidents in the city? Okay. So your theory on the ridership going down is that someone comes up to a station, sees that you don't have hand throttle, you only have pedal assist, and they just decide not to ride a bike?
Yeah, we've seen it globally. We know that every time that we have a class 2 next to a class 1, 90+% of the time, the rider's taking the class 2 vehicle.
What's the penalty for a rider who doesn't bring the bike back to a station?
I think that would just go to our normal procedures to move the rider through the kind of.
They would go through the violation policy. So the very first offense would be a warning.
So you don't charge them to reposition it?
No, we don't charge on the first offense.
Okay. How many, do you know, what percentage of your rides don't comply with your repositioning policy?
I'm happy to provide you with the exact figures. It's in terms of compliance, we're in the high 90s. I don't have that exact figure.
So, and I know you talked about globally, we all live here in Charleston, and I happen to live on the peninsula, which is maybe your good and bad fortune today. And I've got some theories about why your ridership is down. It has nothing to do with the global trends.
Okay.
It has to do with positioning of bikes. I rode today to North Charleston with our legal counsel down Meeting Street and went by one of your stations. Bikes were everywhere, on the ground, upside down. I see bikes on my street, if not daily, weekly, when I walk to work all the time, not in stations. And Liberty Street, which I think you had up on your screen as one of the highest volume stations, I would say is empty of bikes more than it has bikes at it. And I would suspect that has a big part to do with why your ridership in Charleston, not globally, is down.
That's great feedback. I think what we end up seeing with our highest ridership corrals is that the second that we stock them, the bikes are gone. And so we'll stock them a couple of times per day. But I think what we're seeing is just a reflection of the high demand that we have. And so I would agree with you. I think we do have an issue with deployments. We could probably 5x the number of corrals and stations that we have in the city to actually meet real demand. And so we'd be more than happy to continue adding parking pins throughout Charleston because we know it would directly impact ridership in a positive way. So we completely agree.
Who's in charge of repositioning bikes that are left in the middle of the street?
So our Lime team, we have staff that goes around every day and their entire job is to rebalance vehicles, make sure they're properly parked and tidy. If we get any reports, whether it's from residents or from city staff, we go and we address those as well.
I would be very interested to see your numbers on the number of bikes that don't make it back to a station on the peninsula of Charleston in any given week or month. Because I bet it's much higher than you think it is.
I'm happy to follow up with that information.
Okay, a couple other questions, and I'll let you go. You say that your partner that you contribute money to is Charleston Moves?
So
Charleston Moves is one of your partners. How
Yeah.
much money did you contribute to them in 2024?
unfortunately, due to the low ridership, and it is an opt-in program, it's in the hundreds, but what we have done in the past is we'll sponsor events. So we just sponsored Pedal and Panache, and I believe our contribution for that particular event was around $1,000. And so we will supplement our Lime Hero program by local event sponsorships when the opportunity presents itself.
All right, and then two other things that caught my ear while you're doing your presentation. One is that one of the prerequisites to riding one of your bikes is being 18 years of age or older. How do you enforce that?
We have a slew of tech capabilities. We work with every city to determine what the right fit is. It could be a ID scan. There's a selfie scan that we do in Charleston. It's
I can answer that question for you. The answer is no. You don't. So there's no way for you to enforce that.
we can require ID. Where there's a will, there's a way. Unfortunately, we deploy all the tech solutions that we can to address the issue.
How long have you been in your position as government relations person?
I have been with Lime for close to a year, but I've been in the industry for close to 5.
Are you aware that early on, and really until as recently as maybe 6 months ago, we had some geofencing issues with the bikes?
Could you be a bit more specific?
There are certain areas that we determined with you all collectively that bikes should not be able to go. And we were going to geofence those areas so it would turn down the pedal capability, and it didn't work.
I don't think I'm aware of the exact issue, but we can always revisit geofencing, and if geofencing needs to be revised, we're more than happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Just to follow up. You did say.
Correct. Not on time, but if you don't return it to a station.
Okay, let's say you don't return it for a week or two.
So we will keep charging the rider. If the bike is active and they wanna, if somebody chooses to go on a 5-hour joyride, they're being charged for that. At a certain point, if there's inactivity in the bike, it will automatically lock and it will trigger an alarm for our team, and then we'll go and retrieve that vehicle.
So are they so there are traces on it. You can identify where your
Yes,
bike's
they're
at.
all, they all have GPS technology. That's how we can implement the geofencing. It also tells us where they are. And so if a bike is outside of a hub, we'll kind of put that in our rotation, and then our team will go and actually rebalance that vehicle.
John, any privacy issues there?
No, we have very strict privacy regulations that we follow, and so there's no like personally identifiable information that could as a result of using the bike.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda. What is next on our agenda? Rideshare pilot program update, Ms. Pinkston. Sorry, I guess it doesn't. All right, you ready?
Yes.
All right,
Okay.
have at it.
Today we are talking about moving our rideshare zone pickup drop-off pilot program to its permanent phase. So we've been in the pilot program since last May. And we are ready to make it permanent. Okay. So here are some fresh heat maps I got from Uber yesterday. That shows on the left, we have one Saturday night, December 2023, on the right, Saturday night, December 2024. I think they show that the program is working pretty well. We've been successful at getting most of our rideshare traffic off of King Street and onto the side streets. which helps traffic flow more easily, and gives people a safe place to meet their rideshare vehicle. So just a refresher, we've talked about the Cannon King zone as being sort of the trickiest spot of this. And then we also added Ann Street and Calhoun Street in the fall. I think Calhoun Street is now really popping up as probably our busiest rideshare zone. Okay, so we've gotten really positive feedback from both businesses and police. And I think there's generally consensus that the program should continue. So if we're making it permanent, we can now make some physical changes to help everything work a little bit better. I think the biggest issue that we've heard with the zones is that the whole system breaks down when there are cars that are parked in the zones. So we currently have signage at each of the 7 zones. That hasn't been enough to keep cars from parking there. We've had over 1,000 tickets and over 200 tows since the program started. So we found that the best cues to keep people from parking in the zones are bagging the meters and yellow paint. So currently police are going out there and bagging the meters at each of these zones every night, which has been a lot of work for them still. So in thinking about how we could improve them, we tried to strike a balance of making some physical changes to make them work better, to keep cars from parking in the zones, to take some strain off of CPD so that they don't have to focus on parking enforcement all night. And then we also saw an opportunity to co-locate pickup drop-off zones and commercial loading zones, given that rideshare is mainly a nighttime activity and commercial loading generally happens in the daytime. So Morris Street is kind of the perfect example of what we'd like to move towards. So this zone is on a commercial loading zone, and we found that yellow paint is a really good cue to keep people from parking in the zones. They generally respect that you don't park in the yellow. So Morris Street functioning really well. There are 5 that still have metered spots that we think could be improved, but we don't want to take away all the meters. So we had a conversation last week with our team and Councilman Seekings and settled on making physical improvements to these 3 zones, Cannon King, Radcliffe Street, and Calhoun Street. So I'm going to go through each of those. Okay, a little bit hard to see. But Cannon King, we moved this one in the fall from business feedback. And so it's kind of currently half on a loading zone, and then it's like on 1 metered spot. So this one's kind of an easy no-brainer to just take out 1 metered spot and then have 1 consistent yellow painted loading zone. So we don't have to bag that meter every night, and yeah, it'll make it more consistent. Okay, and then Radcliffe Street is kind of a big switch, but the goal is to move it towards that Morris Street condition. So currently the rideshare zone is on 4 metered spots on Radcliffe Street, and then there's a loading zone around the corner. So we're gonna switch that so that the rideshare zone is on the loading zone on Radcliffe Street, and then we can add back in 2 metered spots on King Street to help offset that loss of metered parking spots on Radcliffe. Okay, finally, Calhoun Street. As those heat maps show, this is our busiest rideshare area. And the real safety concern here was that people were being dropped off on the north side of Calhoun and then running across the street in the dark. And then additionally, we have that loading zone on the corner that always backs into King Calhoun and causes issues at that intersection. So we are going to take out the metered parking here and make those commercial loading zones. I think these are mainly late night businesses there now, and we already are closing them to parking at nighttime. And I think the businesses have received it well because they see that it's helping people get to their businesses more easily. So yeah, that's probably the biggest change, but I think it makes a lot of sense both to help rideshare traffic and safety, and we'll get rid of that loading zone at the corner that always causes issues. Okay, finally, we have 2 ordinance updates. We wrote these last summer and they didn't make it into the packet for today, so we can't vote on it for real, but I'm gonna go over what both of them entail. And these are both about issues that we saw popping up last summer, and I don't think there's really been any real issue, but we're gonna change the ordinance anyways to cover all of our bases. So the first is allowing riders with disabilities to request a modified pickup drop-off spot. We wanted to make sure that people who have ADA concerns can still get picked up and dropped off wherever they want or need. And then we also, at the beginning of this, there's a question of whether we would allow food delivery drivers to use the rideshare zones. And I think we've settled on that they can and they've been allowed to, and there haven't been any issues. So this is just a little change to add in that food delivery drivers are allowed to use the zones. So those aren't in the agenda for today. They will be for next month, but yes. Okay, so in summary, we're just looking to make physical changes at those three zones, King Cannon, Radcliffe Street, and Calhoun Street. And then we went over the ordinance updates that you all can vote on next month. That is all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions for Ms. Pinkston on the updates you just gave us on the rideshare pilot program?
Just an observation. You do great work and I appreciate you. But can we get a city symbol on here somewhere?
Sure.
Please? Because I mean, if you look at the document, you'd have no idea that it's Charleston.
True, fair.
Thank you.
Okay. Will
Appreciate
do.
it. Thank you.
So, sorry, Mayor.
One thing I did want to point out, and this isn't really relevant to the rideshare program, except that it directly impacts it, is we do want to work on making sure that we've got ample trash cans wherever those rideshare pickups are. Because I have gotten some complaints about, people waiting on there, and they're just, it's collecting more trash. So we work with a bit on that.
Sure.
And pickup and trash
Pickup,
pickup too,
right.
because if they come down King Street in the morning, they don't go necessarily to the side streets right away. So, and we can work with a bit on that. So just a couple of observations. Thank you for the update. This update and some of these suggestions were run through Lieutenant Taylor, who's sort of been on the police side running this. Chief DeLazet, I think, was on that call too. Chief Walker was on the call as well. I just think one of the things that I would point out is pilot programs work. This is a perfect example. When we started with this pilot program, Calhoun Street wasn't even included. And now we've learned a whole bunch about Calhoun Street and we've made it safer and more accessible. So I do think these adjustments that you're making are really good adjustments. I'm going to be the first to admit when this program started, I was super skeptical, but it's worked. And I think in the end, certainly safer on the businesses and with a very few exceptions, the people who are working in that area, including picking up and dropping off like it. So let's get it back on our agenda so we can adopt this as a permanent ordinance. I have one question, by the way, on the ADA compliant part.
Mhm.
Is there built into Uber and Lyft in their app a designation or a signifier that when someone orders up, they actually meet ADA requirement pickup rules? Or can anyone just say I'm ADA in need and I can just go get picked up anywhere? We might want to look into that, just see if there's, Uber has to have, we use Uber at Cardiff for, as you know, for over 55 and for people who otherwise have needs, and there's a designation for them.
Okay,
So-
we'll look into that.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions, comments, concerns? We'll see you next month with an ordinance.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
appreciate it. All right, next, North Sterling Drive, one-way discussion. I think I know where this might be going. This might be going one way, but we'll see. All right, Mr. Wallace, you drew the short straw on this one. Congratulations, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I'm James Wallace, Transportation Project Manager with the city. So at the direction of this committee, we collected some preliminary data on North Sterling Drive. So North Sterling Drive, 10 to 12 foot wide dirt road on the eastern end of James Island, near the yacht club. So we went and took some volumes late last week after the rains. About 140 vehicles per day total was the highest segment we got. About equal distribution, a little more southbound than northbound, but it's about 55-45. Buses, delivery vehicles, kind of bi-directional, no real pattern to that. No crashes between 2020 and 2024. A couple golf carts, about 5 to 10 peds an hour, I'd say. Generally low activity street. And 12 of the 13 comments that were received were opposed to the one-way conversion. We've also counted it different times in 2022, and the data was pretty consistent with what we counted this time. So happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Do you have a recommendation?
I would recommend that we put it through our formal conversion process, which involves a petition, council member buy-in, basically to make sure that everyone's in support of a conversion
Or not?
or not.
All right, go through the process. All right, any questions, Mr. Somerville? Do you have anything to add to this? Okay, any questions from the committee? Any directive? Yes, sir, Councilmember Greg.
So remind me, there's like a backstory here, from a couple years back about like how this all came to be, right?
Right, so I think Public Works was also involved in this back then. There's, if I believe, and this is all just kind of hearsay, but there's a dam of some sort back there, or a berm that individuals are kind of worried about the condition of it. But I don't know much about the condition of it or anything like that. I just remember that being kind of the background info last time.
Follow-up question. So at one point, didn't we talk about closing this road? Or,
We did.
okay. All right, thanks.
So just a little bit more color commentary. There's an earthen dam sort of crossover from a lake that's back there. And there's school buses actually ride across that road as well. And so what happened was the residents asked through their council member, who is now Councilmember Appel, that we look at this. So I think we should go through the process. I did see the comments that came through online today, but let's see if we get a petition and let's go through the process. It's an interesting place. It's a dirt road. It's kind of windy. It goes through the woods. I can't imagine after a rain what that road looks like, but it can't be great. And with school buses going back and forth, it's kind of crazy. So let's go take a look at it.
I do know that it got fresh dirt put on it on Friday via our traffic cameras, so I'll tell you that.
Awesome. Is there any member here who has any strong feelings in opposition to at least us going through the process and getting the petitions and see where it goes?
If I may,
Sure.
I'm a big advocate of going through the process, not making exceptions. I mean, we've done this on a number of
Right.
occasions. We just approved Senate Street that went through the process. So we need to hear from the residents, and make an informed decision.
No, I got it. And my question was really go through the process or leave it alone, not convert it. Okay, let's go through the process.
I would move just to make it a formal motion so it's on the record so that if anyone's gonna ask, that we accept Mr. Wallace's recommendation to move through the normal channels to get approval if needed, and then it can come back to us.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? A wise motion, by the way. Thank you very much. And a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Let us know. How long do you think it'll take you?
Well, we need to receive a petition with the residents of the streets with 75% in support is step one. So whoever requested the data collection for the study can reach out to me or anyone in our department, and we can get that started. See if they can collect the signatures.
Perfect. All right, we'll see how it goes. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Okay, last but not least, discussion and potential action regarding 6 nighttime pedicab decals. Ms. Kuthers. Here she comes.
Thank you, Chairman. So quick background, in July of 2021, we amended the pedicab ordinance to allow for 6 additional nighttime decals. That was approved by council in August of 21. From what I can gather, because I wasn't here then, the RFP was then put out for those 6 nighttime decals. And in September 2021. And I understand that we canceled that RFP in October to amend the ordinance by removing the requirement that the applicant provide a physical address for storage prior to being awarded the decals. So we amended the ordinance in March of 2022. Since then, we have been on the insurance merry-go-round, which we finally have ironed out. And so now before you is what discussion, potential action on whether or not to issue the 6 additional nighttime decals.
Any question, comment from the committee? Guess we'll keep it on hold for now,
So is this just discussion or is
Yep.
this, okay.
unless there's a motion. All right, thank you very much. Do you want us to make a motion?
I would move that we move forward with it, just to get this, as I know Councilmember Greg and I have discussed, like, this has been a continually ongoing thing for the past several years, and I'd rather just, we did it for a reason. I was here for it. Like, let's just move forward with it now that we've ironed out the issues, and I would move that.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion, questions, comments about it? What's your motion, by the way?
Yeah, I would say that we say yes and issue the decals.
Wouldn't we need, to go
Through the
forth with
process.
another RFP?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's go forward with another RFP. I'll amend that.
All right.
Um,
Second your amended motion.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
I was not here when this initial vote was cast to grant 6 more decals, but I'm just going to go on record that I'm not in favor of granting 6 more decals, so I will not be voting for this motion.
Any other questions or comments? So I'm going to make a comment. I was around when this all began, and I think I might be the headwaters of it. And I regret it ever since. Councilmember Brady, you said everything was done for a reason. I'm not sure what the reason was back then, but one thing I think is very clear, since we began this process, there has not been, not been, a general groundswell of requests of us as a committee to increase the number of pedicabs on the streets. And if anything, there actually has been probably some backlash against the number that we already have out there. Just so you all know, if we issue more decals, it'll go from 30 to 36 at night. And if you all have been downtown, you'll see there's quite a number out there. And again, you may be different. I just haven't heard any requests that we add these numbers. So I, like the mayor, I think, at least for now, as we rethink our streets, as we go through another look at tourism management, the enemy of good is better. Like I said, as we've gone through this process, have not heard any real upswell of desire for us as a community to have more access at night to pedicabs. So I too am going to vote no on this. Any other questions? All right. Motion on the floor is to go through the RFP process for 6 additional nighttime decals. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Was it 4 ayes or 3 ayes? 4 ayes. All right, the ayes have it. Thank you all very much. We'll report this back out to City Council. I think that's it, right? Anything else for the greater good of P&T Committee, the City of Charleston, or anything else? If not, by acclamation, for the next 4 minutes, we'll stand aside and hand it over to Councilmember Gray. Perfect timing. Thank you all very much.